In the Res Gestae, Augustus boasts about where he gets his money from and how he spends his money. So this may not be the most engaging sort of topic for you, but nevertheless it's quite important that you get an idea of what he is trying to tell people in the Res Gestae about where his sources of revenue were coming from. So you may well have gone to church at some point in your life and heard the Christmas readings being read, where it talks about the census, or Jesus being taken to Bethlehem under the census of Augustus. So censuses, what were they? They are lists basically of citizens who owe taxes. So Augustus took periodic censuses of people in the provinces of the Roman Empire, just to make sure that he could get the right amount of taxes from that particular area. And that's the importance of the census, as it were. In terms of annual statements, Augustus regularly published a balance sheet showing where the imperial income was coming from and expenses, part of trying to make this regime look at least transparent to the Roman people. New taxes as well were something that he was doing. Provincial tribute, for the very first time, he says that province owes me that much and that province owes me that much. Partially to make that had been over a number of years, provincial governors under the Roman Republic had been taking too much taxes and upsetting provincials by doing so, lining their own pockets. So if he basically says, as Augustus does, he sets the amount of taxes coming out of a province, it makes it look fairer for the provincials, as well as being transparent. Minting coins, you know all about this. Julius Caesar being the very first person really to put his head on a coin. Minting coins, massively important to Augustus. In 15 BC, he actually sets up an imperial mint in Gaul, which is sort of the France area. So, and after 12 BC, that mint in Gaul produced all the gold and silver coins for the empire. The Senate was responsible for issuing bronze and copper coins for the mint in Rome, but the coin types really reflect Augustus's policies. So gold, mainly coming out of France in Lugdunum, and then the Senate being responsible for bronze and copper coins under Augustus. But of course there are still, it's not just coins that are being produced by Augustus, there are still his followers are enabled to do this as well. There are three sorts of treasuries, that is where the money is kept under Augustus. The public treasury, which was supervised from 23 BC by praetors, and in theory all the taxes from the provinces went into that treasury, but in practice only the surplus went there. The public treasury was often short of funds for grain, water supplies and roads, so Augustus in the Res Gestae is going to boast about making large donations to it. There was also the military treasury instituted by Augustus in AD 6, and the idea of this is to provide for veterans' pensions. That treasury fund came from inheritance and sales taxes, and it was administered by 3 praetors, but actual control was in the hands of, guess who? Augustus, of course. And then you get the fisci, the sort of provincial chests, or the treasuries into which taxes were paid and from which money for military and administrative purposes was withdrawn. Augustus could then draw from the fisci in both imperial and senatorial provinces. We know where the state wealth came from. It came mainly from the provinces, but what about his personal wealth itself? Well, if you have a look here, you can see the various places that he gets his personal wealth from. He was a very, very wealthy man, and in the Res Gestae he boasts about giving a lot of this away to various people, and that's the purpose today of the lesson, really, is to look at where he was saying that he was getting his money from and giving his money away to. So firstly, his personal wealth, of course, is going to come from his natural father, Gaius Octavius, who, although obscure, was actually the governor of Macedonia at one point, so not poor by any stretch of the imagination, but not rich either, in comparison to other Romans. Also, of course, his adopted father, Julius Caesar, left his personal wealth to Augustus in his will. And don't forget, when Augustus was Octavian, way back in 44-43, Mark Antony tried to stop Octavian getting access to that money that was left to him by Julius Caesar in Julius Caesar's will by legal means. And in fact, Mark Antony spent a lot of that money himself. But nevertheless, Octavian's personal inheritance is coming partially from his natural father, Gaius Octavius, and then his adopted father, Julius Caesar. Property confiscated during the proscriptions is another place that he gets his personal wealth from. Hopefully you remember what the proscriptions are. This is during that triumviral period between about 44 BC and 31 BC, so that's just after the death of Julius Caesar, right down to Actium. And in that time period, if you remember rightly, Mark Antony, Octavian and Lepidus drew up a lot of lists of enemies, political enemies that they wanted to kill, called the proscriptions. Well, when those enemies were killed, they then divided up the wealth between them. So those are called the proscriptions, where during that time period between sort of 43, the death of Julius Caesar, down to Actium in about 31, he confiscates basically the money and the estates of political enemies, and Mark Antony, Octavian and Lepidus dole it out between themselves in that proscription period. Also, never forget, blimey, he gets a lot of his money from the Ptolemies of Egypt. I'm sure if you all think about Egypt, you think about Tutankhamun, the gold, etc., that's associated with the pharaohs. Also, money from Egypt doesn't just come in terms of gold, although that is massively important. It also comes in terms of grain wealth and land, of course, doesn't it? Booty from various wars. So, you know, if he's been out to Dalmatia and putting down those Dalmatians, as it were, he gets money from that. He confiscates money from those wars. So if he's fighting abroad, money comes into for that reason. Those Parthians send money over as well. So he's getting booty from various wars that he's fighting, and then legacies from friends that might have died, like Marcellus, his son-in-law, adopted son, would have left money to Augustus, Agrippa, when he dies, of course. Maecenas, massively important to Augustus because he is Augustus's literary patron, the literary patron of Virgil and Horace. So that's where he gets his personal wealth from, his inheritance from his father, Gaius Octavius, adopted father Julius Caesar, property confiscated during the proscriptions, money from Egypt, the treasuries of Egypt brought him gold, brought him grain, booty from various wars, money from various wars that he's taken off people that he's conquered, and legacies from his friends like Marcellus, Maecenas, etc. These are mentioned as not mentioned specifically in the Res Gestae, but this is where he is getting his personal wealth from, to say that he's giving it away to the Roman people. Remember that the focus of this particular module is not necessarily on the history, it's more on the presentation of Augustus. So the information that you've actually got on slides 2, 3 and 4 is important to understand what he's talking about in the Res Gestae. So please do make notes on slides 2, 3 and 4. But the main exercises actually come from the Res Gestae in the way that he's presenting himself there. So you're going to need the sheet marked Res Gestae and expenditure, which you'll find hopefully in the uploaded documents. And you're going to need that sheet to fill in the tables on the sheet marked table to fill in for expenditure. Then you fill in the table on the sheet marked dedications. So basically, this week you're going to have to make notes on 2, 3 and 4, those PowerPoint slides. You're then going to need to find the sheet marked Res Gestae and Expenditure, and then you use that sheet to fill in the table marked table to fill in for expenditure, and then there's a table on the sheet marked dedications as well. Just to give you an idea of how he is presenting the way that he is spending his money to the Roman people.